Welcome to the podcast, everybody. This is like the fourth one I've done today, so I'm a little burnt out. I changed my clothes, so at least I look clean. But our guest today is an expert in the Baroque, but apparently that is just a sliver of what she does. So Jen, would you tell us all about what you do and where you're from and what makes you special?
Yeah. Well, I'm Jen Drake. I live in Boise, Idaho. I've been here for 20 years. I'm a
Now, is that Boise or Boise?
Boise. No Z.
Boise.
Boise. That's right. That's right. You got to be super particular about that. It was the thing I learned within my first week of being in Boise, that it's Boise. So yeah, I'm a violist. That's my primary thing. I play viola in the Boise Philharmonic, the Boise Baroque Orchestra. I'm principal viola of that. But I'm also a conductor where I conduct a community orchestra in Boise and the Boise Philharmonic Youth Orchestra. I teach private lessons. I run 2 summer camps. Lots of different things. So there's a whole festival of experiences that I do. And in terms of being like an expert in the Baroque era, I do a lot of Baroque playing, and I've been learning more and more all the time. I just did a concert with Monica Huggett, and that was a really great time to learn more about the Baroque era. And Boise Baroque has really branched out this past year in our approach to historically informed performance. So that's been really quite interesting and fun to undertake.
Well, and when I was in college, my students know this, and we were talking earlier, I did a fair amount of Baroque playing in some continuo competitions. Mm-hmm. And as I've dabbled in the, classical with a capital C community and the Baroque early music communities,
yes,
the personalities are just way more fun in the early music world. Whatever it is that you are into, they are so excited to hear about. Or they are so ready to tell you what their thing is. Yes. Whereas in the classical world, it's kind of like, I go here in the corner and I do my thing, and if you're not any good at your thing, I don't want to talk to you. But not the case with the early music people.
No, the early music people are great. I used to play in a ensemble that was viola and bass clarinet, Darkwood Consort. We're actually getting the band back together soon. The bass clarinetist is also now probably the world's leading expert on the Doucend, which is like a primitive oboe, maybe is
like a duduk?
Sort of. It sounds a little bit like you're playing a platypus. That's what I can tell you about it. So you get like these giant, I think possibly reeds very closely related to like contrabassoon reeds.
Okay.
It's an instrument about like, I don't know, probably longer than this screen, so mm-hmm. It may be about like 16, 17 inches long. And it's a really interesting sound. It's like a very primitive Baroque oboe. Anyway, Owen Nielsen. He plays in several groups in the Portland area. He's got a band called Triplum. Anyway, I really developed my love for early music performing with him, and we would do a lot of Renaissance music. And so so we would like rock out with like all the Michaud and Landini and medieval and Renaissance music that you could handle.
Well, for the kids watching who have never heard the kind of music we're talking about, like all of the bass lines in every pop tune right now is an imitation of a Renaissance bassoon.
For sure.
You listen to that stuff. Honestly, the bassoon is cooler to me, but I'm one of those nerds. So
yeah, man, love me some bassoon. So for sure. But I developed my love of early music playing in this ensemble, and we would sort of say that we would do new and used music. So what I love about the like early Baroque, late Renaissance, and especially medieval, is that the composers never really had the nerve to tell you what instruments to do things on. It's just you could play it on whatever you had lying around, and that would be a great time. So we felt just fine co-opting all of this music for bass clarinet and viola, and we're doing so we've been able to revisit some of that recently. But I would get out even an old viol and totally. So that was a great time, with all the gut strings and everything. And so when I made the transition to playing in the Baroque orchestra, I already had some experience that way, and it's very interesting to me how the technology informed the performance of the music. It's really
Yes.
about, that's really the thing. And it's kind of funny because you don't think of like a bow as being technology, but it totally is. I've got my Baroque bow right here. And this one is from Claire Gibbons, but a lot of us get the the $150 Char Baroque bow is a fun place to start. But
I'm even worse. I got one for $20 on eBay. I don't know who made it or where it came from, but
totally,
it does not sound great. If you're if you're trying to get into Baroque, you should get a bow that was made by a real human that wants to set it up with you and is someone near you. But
I mean, you can at least spend that $150 for sure. But there's a guy in Portland, whatever the big shop is there. It just escaped me, but I know that they're selling some really great Baroque bows now too. But it's just so interesting because a lot of the times you're going after this lighter yet more resonant kind of sound because of the way the technology is with the giant violas and like the shortened fingerboards and the lighter instruments that you
and the shape is not consistent either.
Sometimes not at all.
It literally looks like a bow and arrow.
Yeah, totally. So like you can see that this one here, I mean, I'm probably wearing all of the outfits.
It's definitely more concave than the one that I have.
And so the we did a concert with Rachel Barton Pine several years ago, and she brought all of her Baroque bows.
Well, she's not so bad.
Yeah, it was pretty good. So but anyway, with using the Baroque bow, and she was like really like, no, just go ahead and just have that whole arc out there. And it's interesting because like when you play with the Baroque bow, the concept of torque is altered entirely.
Oh yeah.
Because there's because the curvature isn't going this way. For all of our non-physics major, torque is force applied in a circle. But because the circle is applied a different way, you get a completely different response out of the bow. And it was very interesting working with Monica Huggett because we all thought they were going to get like all of this like super like handcrafted advice as to exactly how to do things. You're like, you just kind of hold it and you just go. And that was like our advice from Monica. I'm like, okay, I can do that. I can just hold it and just kind of let it go.
Even if there were rules back when these tools were being used, nobody cared to write them down in a way that would be particularly preserved. So it's kind of the Wild West.
Right, it is. And there's like, tons of backwards engineering on this, where I'm sure that you've read that giant Donington text about all of the different ways that yeah, totally right. That's a date killer right there. Like,
let me talk to you about ornamentation.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I hear your upper appositora. That's right. So like, so that's definitely a thing. But in the Baroque era, what I find just so fascinating, and this is like true for all eras especially, but Baroque, that all of the answers to the interpretation are in the compositional style.
Yes.
How, I don't know, when you're working with, say, like 7th graders and you're starting to talk about Baroque style, and you're like, and let's say that you're doing something where it's like quarters and eighth notes, so like the eighth notes are more connected and the quarter notes are going to be shorter.
Yep.
But the reason all of that is because the quarter notes are almost always larger intervals. So you're skipping around the instrument. Yep. And your eighth notes are closer together. So that writing, constitutes a longer experience, where the skipping, that, needs to be a shorter kind of a sound. So it's fascinating.
When we're working with modern technology, something that my students will groan and cry about all the time is when we have paired slurs of anything. And the second one must be less.
Yes, totally.
Because, and perhaps you could demonstrate for us, if you just play 2 notes with equal pressure, the second one will naturally be less in sound.
Right, totally. So let's say that we do like a slur from our TV. Like just by nature of doing it, you get like less sound on that second one. If we do several of them, I'm sure that the computer sounds amazing. It's kind of funny.
You can hear it just fine.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's funny. I have like a really nice microphone and speakers, and I know that all of my students are having their lesson like on their iPhone or whatever. So I've like gone to all of these pains to make sure that this is all a good experience here. But I like no idea what's going out on there on the internet. But something like a Bach Jig or something like that, you have like all your 3 slurs.
Oh yeah.
Try to get myself here in a So, when we're here and we start having our groups of three. So you can hear that you get a lot of that release with every bow stroke. So,
well, I was my wife is sort of being my violin teacher right now because I'm so bored and I need something to do, and I printed out a bunch of etude books, but I lack the tenacity to just sit there and do it every day with the same routine.
Right.
And so I've had her go through my little. I don't know if you know this guy.
Oh yeah, that guy. Yeah, hey, me and that guy are partying right now.
But this what? Well, you mean this one?
Oh yeah, totally. Yes, I do mean that one.
So this one is a study score size, and it fits in your case behind your bow.
Handy.
And so every day before I leave for work, she picks out one of those for me to learn. And today I was working on the first minuet from the third partita.
Yeah.
And there's just so many opportunities where you could separate a double stop where the one note is stagnant and the other is moving, or static and the other is moving.
Yeah.
Or when do you add slurs? Where do you add double ups? And then I thought, well, they wouldn't have had the tools I have playing this. And there's a good chance, and a couple of doctoral theses written that they weren't even meant for violin, viola, or cello anyway. They were meant for organ, and he was short on paper.
Yeah.
But I just missed that theory just because they're near and dear to me.
Right.
So I look up on YouTube, I forget his first name, but his surname is Sato. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah. Yep.
And he has the most tremendous Baroque sound. And because he's working with a Baroque bow, he is doing all of these retakes in places that you would never imagine, because down is strong and up is weak.
Yep.
And if you want strong, you just can't force strong in an up bow the way you can with a modern bow. And I had to totally rethink the way that I was interpreting the piece.
Right, for sure. With a lot of things that we're doing in the Baroque orchestra right now. Oh, there's my phone. I'm gonna have to hang that one up a second. This is compelling podcasting right here. Hi, I can call you back in 10 minutes or 20 minutes, well, maybe 30. So I'll call you back real soon. Okay, bye. Okay, there we are. All right. Yes, please put that in the podcast. Now my dog is barking. This
Absolutely.
Uncut video right here. Yeah, with a lot of viola parts especially, we find ourselves doing, that kind of a big old retake, oftentimes doing stuff like that to get yourself back in the appropriate part of the bow. Big old giant retakes all the time.
Just for the people watching, that amazing Baroque dude is Shunsuke Sato is his name.
There we are.
There was a big debate on the Facebook orchestra teacher group about best Bach recording, and everybody was, Hilary Hahn. Well, okay, she's great. She plays every note right, perfectly in tune, no questions.
Yeah.
If you want informed Bach performance, Shunsuke Sato. But what you were just showing us on viola there, last year I was teaching the Telemann Don Quixote suite.
Oh, yeah.
Which is so underappreciated and underplayed, and a middle school orchestra can do it easy.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, there's some hard stuff in the first violin part in the Symphonia in the beginning.
Right.
But that's what, welcome to the rest of your life, first violins.
Yeah,
you have lots of notes.
Yes.
And some of the boring parts, or maybe more difficult to appreciate parts for violoncello,
yes,
it's a perfect opportunity to learn why those are so beautiful. So talk to us about repeated long short patterns, like in 3.
Oh man, so
that's my favorite thing to do on viola.
Oh man, so sometimes you'll get there's that one movement in Don Quixote where I think that the viola plays
speaking, I think.
Yeah, it's like.
Yep.
Where it's just that for the whole time, and the joy is in really enjoying that first note and then building the next 4 so you can really enjoy that long note again. And like, ain't no thing like an open string, so totally fine to like just go ahead and let that thing, ring on out there. It's the sound we're trying to recreate every time you put down a finger. So.
And as the teacher or the conductor, the melody really isn't all that interesting.
No, it's something like right, something along those lines. But it's
well, so where I'm going with that is the ostinato parts can tell more about the story than the melody. If the melody is just Don Quixote sleeping, the viola is telling us what he's dreaming about.
Right, exactly, totally. The viola is always the delicious caramel center of of the experience, and like that's really one of the big joys of viola playing is really shaping things from the inside. Oftentimes as violists, like especially I remember being a particularly obnoxious 8th grade violist and be like,
I don't have any of those.
I don't. Yeah, totally right. Okay. Well, hey, man, violas. Let's talk about that summer camp, Idaho Viola Camp. It's more fun than it sounds. So, it's a good time. 1 week of nothing but violas. In fact, I have a viola orchestra arrangement of Don Quixote, which we've performed.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. Make sure I get a link to put in the video for this.
Yeah, so it's idahoviolacamp.com. That's
okay. Easy to remember.
Yep, totally. And we're at the first full week of August, so we're hopeful that this year is going to be a winner. So, yeah, I know, totally. Yes, yay. Idaho is already the social distancing capital of the universe, so I'm hopeful.
Well, except for Sun Valley, but they got something else going on.
Right, exactly. I mean, like, everybody who's got, everybody with a Learjet is there.
Well, I think it's the only place in the continental U.S., or contiguous U.S., that has private jet parking.
Yes.
Is Sun Valley, Idaho.
Yes, it's every now and then I'll go and I'll play a gig there, and like, we'll get put up in somebody's like, carriage house or whatever, which is like larger than my actual house, and
we did when I was at PLU, we did a choir tour out there, because choir is such a big thing with the high schools in Boise, as you probably know. And we did some homestays. And I stayed in a gentleman's house that had a moat.
Oh, yeah.
A moat.
That is that's a full Sun Valley experience you've had there.
And a couple of vintage cars, of course. But back to viola. Yes. So, what could I start looking for if I've just got my Cecilio viola and my $20 bow and internet access? How can I start to get my Baroque on?
How can you start to get your Baroque on? Oh man, that's a good time for like getting your Baroque on for the beginning violist. So, mostly the best thing you can do is listen to as much stuff as possible. Find those artists. In terms of fun things to listen to for violas,
yes, please.
There's a great recording by, I think, Pamela Goldsmith of a bunch of Telemann symphonias. And they are a really good time. There's, of course, your classic Telemann Viola Concerto, and the Telemann Concerto for 2 violas, super fun to listen to and play. That's a really quality experience.
Well, and people talk all the time about Karl Stamitz, but they are sleeping on Johann. Johann has excellent stuff for Baroque instruments, especially viola.
Yes. So, you can't go wrong with Telemann. Flackton, the Flackton Sonata is a good time.
Can you spell that for me?
Flackton.
Flac.
Kton.
Flackton.
Yes.
Never heard of that guy.
Yeah, Flackton Sonata. That's
crazy.
It's and then there's other fun viola things. There's an Eccles Sonata that gets sort of appropriated by all the people.
I think I've heard it on bass most.
Yeah, bass. You hear it on bass, but violas have co-opted it as part of their lifestyle. There's a Marcello Sonata, same kind of thing. All of the Bach unaccompanied you can handle.
And violas complain that the Bach didn't write anything for them, but the good news is that Bach wrote everything for you.
Yes, absolutely.
The 6 sonatas and partitas.
Yes.
And the cello suites.
Right, and of course, the granddaddy of all great Baroque pieces, the Brandenburg Number 6. So.
Indeed.
Yes. I got to perform that this year with the Baroque Orchestra, so that was it was really funny because we of course had our Baroque bows and we're going for historically informed style, and my partner Aurora Torres, my viola partner for this piece, and we were reading it on our iPads, so it was very historically informed. So that was a lot of fun.
Now, my students have seen with great terror the How It's Made video about gut strings.
Oh, yeah.
But in my experience, very few Baroque players actually use a full set of gut strings.
Right.
Talk to me about that choice and why you might not choose to use all gut strings.
You might not choose to use all gut strings. Like for me, for instance, the viola that I play on is also my regular symphony viola. So like in a given week, I could go from playing some Bach to playing, Richard Strauss. And while the gut strings are fantastic for the Bach, it's not so much a Richard Strauss friendly environment.
So it's a versatility thing.
Yeah, exactly. So there's that. And then the generalized stability of the gut strings. That's definitely a thing too. The other thing is that, like, and this is just a personal preference, they just feel gross. They're kind of slimy feeling. Like, I know that, like, maybe slimy is not the most accurate word, but you played on some Baroque gut strings before.
Well, it's kind of like touching toasted leather, I think.
A little bit, yeah. It's like, what I imagine petting an alligator might be like a little bit. There's a little bit of that kind of feeling to it.
Well, and for a violin player, you better bring 3 E strings for the one concert.
Yeah, exactly. When we did our concert with Monica Huggett, she first of all, with the Baroque orchestra that I play in, everything's at like A440. That's concert pitch. And
432, I imagine.
Yeah, it's right. It's like global pitch warming, but we're right there at 440. But the Portland Baroque, I think that they're at 415 for their A.
Wow.
Yeah. So like she came into town and I got to perform this really cool piece with her where it was for 2 violas, cello, and violin and continuo. And but that first rehearsal, she just kept having to crank, and like she totally broke an E string, and like we took break early that day because she had to like tune back up and settle.
I forget the guy's name now, but he's the early music professor at Michigan, and he's fantastically eccentric. And his answer to why tune lower isn't that they didn't standardize the A pitch or that they just liked it that way or some new age it's good for the cells in your body. It was actually just you broke fewer strings. It was just a lower tension. The strings lasted longer.
See, that makes complete economic sense to me as well. That's like, okay, great. If you're going at that and we all decide that that's perfect. Not having to go and purchase more strings always sounds good.
Well, and I'm full on Norwegian with a small splash of Italian, and so I do Hardanger fiddle.
Oh, fun! Really?
And there's some Hardanger groups up here in the far left PNW, and they tune what would be open A to a B flat, and at the competitions, if you really want to like shine bright, you tune all the way up to a B.
Oh yeah.
But you're using gut strings, and those it's basically violin strings with like one less thread of intestine thrown in there. And so the higher you tune, the more you're risking a totally ruined performance.
Right. Yeah, that's very interesting. I love all that Norwegian Hardanger fiddle stuff. We've got a guy in town, Ken Pollard, Owyhee Mountain Fiddle Shop. This guy does it all. He's made a poquette, like the little teeny fiddles.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, those are super cool. I'm gonna more compelling viewing. All right, there we are. Today brought to you by Diet Dr. Pepper. But he's made that, but he's also in recent years built a Hardanger fiddle. He's built a couple of really beautiful violas, and he's doing this new thing with violas that I think is so brilliant. Where I kind of want to get one. Where in the scroll he does it like a Norwegian, like a Viking ship. So like this part is negative space. So the
Oh
yeah. So it looks just like one of those like a Norwegian Viking ship scrolls, and it's very cool. And what I like about it is it cuts some of the weight out of viola because it's so it can be unwieldy. So you've got to do whatever you can to make it lighter and easier to cope with. So
before I took viola lessons, I would, in the nastiest and most vile of ways, shame violas for not holding their scrolls high enough.
Like, yeah, then you played a viola, right?
Yeah, and the one that I borrowed from PLU was a Bill Watson, if you know the maker, and he made some brilliant violas, but they were all quite large, and not just lengthwise, but also the width, which gave to their beautiful round sound. But man, did you get tired trying to hold that fiddle up high enough? Because I'm all about letting gravity be your friend. If you hold the scroll up high enough, you don't have to worry about keeping your bow next to the. But there comes a point where laziness and efficiency duke it out, and one wins and one loses.
Right. Totally. And like in your operating downhill and everything. But this viola that I have, this is built by Jack Consul. Jack is a bass player in the Spokane Symphony, and he is really just brilliant. I love this viola so much. It's so nice and lightweight. And I know from this podcast, you probably think that I am like tall and glamorous, but I am about 5'1", 5'2" if you include the hair when it's poking up. And so, like, just as a comparison, here's my can of Diet Dr. Pepper. You can see that I don't really have very large hands at all. They're pretty small, So, but like on this particular viola, I can actually like reach tenths, which is a good time, and it's an inch viola. So it's more about flexibility than anything else. So,
well, this is totally not a Baroque or early music related question. But when I have private viola students, I get I can't reach that all the time.
Yeah, they're lying to you. They can't.
Yeah, no, absolutely. and I see the pain on their faces, and I really do feel for them. But let's say I'm trying to do a tenth between the A and D strings, between, let's say, first finger on G and fourth finger on high B. And I've got tiny hands. What do I need to change from like high school viola player to professional to make that happen? And it's not going to be comfortable, but to make it happen and at least get the right pitches.
Okay, so to make it happen, are you talking like a one-time deal or consistently? So the tricks are to really start to develop the flexibility across the hand. So with my left hand, the flexibility. So here's my right hand. I'm going like this. Here's the left hand flexibility. Yeah. So it's about developing the stretch across the hand this way. So just on a daily basis, if you start to do the thing where you're working to build this extension, so you put your fourth finger down somewhere and then reaching back as far as you can, and just like hold that for a moment. It feels great. You'll experience many sensations.
But reaching back rather than reaching ahead.
So reaching back generally works a little bit better. And the other trick is to have your thumb a little bit more towards the center of your hand for those reaches, so you can get that to all happen. But it's a fun party trick on viola. It's not an interval that I have to play frequently, but like every now and then, it's nice to like have that and like.
Well, and I think it will assuage the students to know that maybe for that moment you can't reach that.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, is like you really do have to develop it over time. The sooner you can start to learn how to do extended four for like say G sharp on the C string, the sooner you can incorporate that into your technique, the better. I'm always like, appalled when students don't know anything about their fourth finger and they've been playing for a couple of years. You're like, how does that happen? Also with viola players, you know how usually when you start string players, you build from the first finger on up, and that's your overall approach to the instrument. And with viola players, if you can start with fourth finger on down, thinking that direction, that's another way to start to really help expand that reach. You know, it's one of my, you know, fun party tricks to be able to reach and do a giant like stretch like that. But it's really all about that idea of like, you know, just spending a little bit of time. It's like learning how to do the splits, but for your hands. So you know, just have to like spend a little time stretching it each day.
For the violin players out there who can get their hands on a viola,
yes,
one of my party tricks was to go through and practice the Fiorio and Gavini's etudes on viola.
Yes.
Because the first Gavini's etude was just all rolling chords where you have to reach, you know, tenths and octaves, and man, is it painful on viola. And if I spent enough time, I could get it to sound, you know, B minus.
Right, totally, yeah.
And then I would go back to violin, or maybe the first Paganini Caprice, even better example.
Yeah, exactly.
And then go back to violin, and man, does it feel comfortable.
You know, I like to compare it a little bit to, like, it's the difference between, like, a violin is like a road bike, whereas a viola is like a mountain bike, you know? So
yeah.
You get to explore all of the really interesting scenery on the mountain bike. You know, the road bike's all about, like, you know, speed and being lightweight and fleet, but the viola is more about adventure. So, you know, or if it's like cars, like the violins or the race cars, and we're like the Land Rovers, or like, you know, the SUVs of the car world.
Does that come with leather interior?
It totally comes with leather interior, rich Corinthian leather. So
hand stitched.
yeah. Yes.
Well, maybe to get back on track, as much fun as we're having, we were talking before I hit record about Baroque vibrato.
Yes.
Can you tell us all about Baroque vibrato, because it is my favorite thing in the world.
Okay, so the idea here is that Baroque vibrato is really all about resonance. So the idea here to get the instrument to do all of the hard work for you, and you can do like, so we're accustomed to as classical players. Let me get the classical equipment because my hands will do the right things then. You know, so you're like, and it's all here, and this is all moving here. But with our Baroque idea, we want to have like the natural resonance of the instrument. It's so hard to get your hands on like a 19 or 20 inch, you know, DeSalo instrument and get it to vibrate because your hand is like all the way out here, and like it can't happen.
Yeah, even Paganini's having a hard time.
Right, exactly. So the idea here is we want to get the resonance of the instrument, and you can get the instrument to move around a little bit. It'll do some of the vibrato for you. I always like to joke with my viola students when they're first starting to learn how to do vibrato that there's this phenomenon called leg vibrato. So you're going to get the full experience here. So we'll do a note, and I'll move my leg around, and you get the experience that way. But with the idea of... with Baroque music, it's more about letting the bow sculpt the sound for you, and the natural resonance of the instrument is the thing. So, like, I have to, like, turn off my hands when I've been teaching all day, so it's like, okay, kid, and we do the vibrato.
Yeah,
Yep. And you can get the instrument little pulses right there.
Talk to me about the rotating the scroll, because I feel like for me that's where it really happens.
Right. So what happens here is you actually, so when we're working with this, we're spinning the sound by spinning the string to do that. So if we start to do a complementary circle with the instrument as well, it creates some of those interesting vibrations in the sound waves. So here's without, which is lovely and delightful. But if I pull and then go like this a little bit, you can hear that the wavelengths start to move in a different way. It's kind of fun.
And I, on viola or sometimes on violin, find that it's most pronounced on, you know, one of those long, short, like 3/4 time.
Yeah.
On a cadential figure, like a bum, 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 bum.
Yep.
And it's right on like the last 3 notes is where I can really get that vibrato to happen.
Right, totally. You know, the best person for that, my friend Brian Hodges, the principal cellist of the Baroque Orchestra, can really juice that moment quite well.
Mm-hmm.
So, he's quite good at that. Most of the, of course, like the viola version of that is like. So
but
like,
nonetheless beautiful.
no, not at all. Just like, fewer notes doesn't mean less pretty. So, it's what you do with the 3 notes that makes the difference. So,
well, and like a tuba player, it makes the stakes so much higher.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, like you're living in a glass house. If you're only playing like 3 different notes, you best not screw up any of them.
Yeah.
And like, we were talking about earlier how it's really the insides of things that are the best. It's those inner parts that really create the drama, the pathos, the joy. We have all of those parts that contribute to that, and we really glue the sections together and help communicate from melody to bass line. We're the stuff that really holds it all together.
Now, I'm sure this is a little bit to facilitate the Baroque playing, but I've asked 2 of my guests now already because it's a loaded question because it's a belief that I have. Talk to me about middle chin rest.
Oh, middle chin rest. Okay, so note that I have the middle chin rest right here, and so there's a couple of things about it. So the way the instrument is built with the block in the center, if you've got this here, then like everything is all sort of blocked together and we're not clamping a different part of the instrument, so we get more resonance. Also for shoulder rest, I just have like this little pad right here, so we can free things up a little bit more. I have this little thing that I'll put on occasionally, depending if I need a little bit of extra support or depending on what I'm playing. But the idea is to create as much resonance as possible. And I find that as a shorter person, I need to have every single advantage possible to get the viola like over here so I can play it. So if I have it here, then it's a lot easier for me to cope with doing something like a big old massive shift.
And what you just do with your thumb there, my viola teacher, Betty Agent, who's a very small woman with a very big viola, is the thumb can't just hang out behind the neck all the time.
No, you do have to be able to float it up here. And
if you're not secure, that's going to be really difficult.
Right. So you have to be secure, and like there's a couple of tricks depending on what you're playing to cope with being up that high. So you want to have get your thumb in the crook of the neck kind of as long as you can, because like then you can also offer a little bit of downhill support. But once you start getting up here to this stratosphere, depending on how long you're going to be there, if you hook the thumb under slightly, you can have a little bit of like extra support that way. And then the other thing too is just the odds of you being like here on the C string doing that, but you can use, the thumb for support there. And it's not so much climbing up the ladder that's scary as it is coming back down.
Absolutely.
That's always the thing there. So I always tell my students that when it's time to shift, they have to think of like, this is really terrible, but I'll tell you anyway. I tell them that they have to pretend there's been some sort of horrifying accident, and now instead of having a hand, they have this prosthetic hook from here, and the hook is what it is that takes them from one location to the next. So there's no weird wrist flexing that happens. It's just the hook. The hook takes you there, the hook takes you back. The thumb, it has to go along with the hook. It's going to detach slightly right here, so you can, and because like once you're up to about this position, you judge where all the other positions are based on this distance from your thumb.
That's
and like
such a huge problem with students when they start shifting. Is oh gosh, the cathedral's going to stop this from there. There we go. Now we can see. Is that they move the hand, but they leave the thumb.
Right, exactly.
It's all one.
That's what I like about the prosthetic hook. There's really no way around it.
Yeah, that's all you got.
That's right. It's a horrible analogy, but there it is. I also had a teacher tell me once that with your bow hand, you should have enough space between each finger for a cigarette. So that is
helpful.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like, thanks, So, but I mean, it's just so terrible. I can't help but think that every time now.
Well, if it works, I have a couple more just very boring questions.
I love boring questions. Yes, go ahead.
So, I'm a big kind of like tech gear nerd.
Okay.
And I love on my viola the new Warchild Brilliance.
Okay, I haven't tried those yet.
So. And they give you a fat discount on your first set if you buy direct from them, just FYI.
Oh, okay, good to know. I mean, I'm always sort of like on the lookout for that perfect setup, and I still haven't quite.
Well, the A string still doesn't quite. The A string is always the problem on viola. And here's the question:
Yeah.
A strings on violas, and tell me what A string should I get if I have a softer, more mellow viola, a brighter, more buoyant viola, or just like your run-of-the-mill school viola? What A string should I be looking for?
Oh man, so okay, I'm gonna give you the really terrible answer of it kind of depends, because every instrument itself, even like with your run-of-the-mill school viola, some are gonna work better with, say, even like a helicore or a dominant than they will with other instruments. For a more mellow sound, I kind of waffle between these obligatos that I have on here now,
Uh-huh.
and the new Evaporazzi Gold,
Yes.
which I like for about 12 minutes. There is this magical special day that they sound amazing for like the whole time. But I just wish they had a little bit longer shelf life. You know what I mean? I play.
Well, it's funny because it's actually the opposite on violin. Is that the regular Ava Parazzis on violin sound terrible for 2 weeks and they sound okay for a year.
Yeah.
And the Ava Gold sound terrible for or I said it totally backwards.
Yeah.
The regular Ava Parazzis sound great for like a month and then they sound terrible. Right. Ava Gold sound awful for a week and then will last more than a year. The newer Ava Golds.
Yeah.
But I don't know what they did with the viola A string, but I have not had a great experience with it.
No, I find that with the A strings, I've been going between I can picture the package the Vision A string sometimes.
Yeah.
And then the other one that I like almost is the Larson A string.
I was gonna say is at the end of the day, I always come back to Larson,
right?
Not because I like or dislike it, but because it's consistent.
Right, exactly. You always know what you're getting with that one. So right now I'm just running a set of just obligatos right now, and like I almost like it, but like there is a definite unevenness with the A string that is like not amazing. That I could go with a different route going with a Larson, but there's also sometimes I just don't quite want to put out like $160 for one set and then have this stray A string that's not going to go with it. I know that some places you can order an almost set with a different A, but it's
one of my favorite viola players, John Scanlon. Do you know John Scanlon?
Oh, yeah, I know John Scanlon. Yeah, yep.
He shared with me the greatest viola string set ever, but it's terribly expensive.
Oh, yes.
So it's the Spirit Chord Tungsten C, and then Vision Solo G and D, and I forget which A string he was using. And it could also just be John and his viola, but it spoke perfectly, immediately, and with, I think, complexity rather than brightness or darkness.
Yeah, totally.
On violin, I've settled on Passiones. That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
Because it is gut, but it doesn't sound or speak like gut, and it's really loud, and they last like 10 months.
Oh, perfect. See, I should give that a go.
But I haven't tried them on viola just because they're too expensive.
Yeah. No, I'd probably be willing to shell out for that. With students, there's always like the considerations of like, okay, you got to train the parents to understand like what these strings are going to cost, but you don't want to give them like the terror of sticker shock of like, the first time out, banging out, $120 only to do it 6 months later. So, depending on the student and their family and the situation, I've got a couple of sort of stock things that I do. I had great hopes when they came out with the Zyx strings. I know, right? I had like such hope. I was going,
and like, have you heard?
They're so horrible. Yes, tell me.
Parastro decided that tonicas don't need to be expensive anymore.
Oh, okay.
You can get a set of tonicas for $25, and I take those hand over fist over dominance any day.
Yeah, totally.
It's kind of like poor man's Ava Parazzi.
Yeah, that's great. Good to know.
And helicores are fine.
Yeah, like a nice like if they're doing something, if they got like something like a terrible red label or something on there,
Oh,
it's like,
oh, get it off of
I
there.
know, right, totally. It's like a starting point for upgrades. Like, okay, let's get you used to spending a little more on strings and
Well, and a lot of teachers feel like helicore is kind of that bare minimum, but the quality and production since Daddario took over the Kaplan show
uh-huh.
is they don't last like they used to.
No, they
And you
don't.
notice like the D string has this kind of like it looks dirty. It looks like
It
it
does. It
was
looks dirty, and like every now and then you'll see like a nick right where the third finger is gonna go, and it's like, crap, that's gonna wear
and it
out in 3
cuts
weeks.
through the nut and the bridge faster than any other brand of string.
Yeah.
So the tonicas for the people out there, if you haven't looked them up, tonicas are like maybe for viola like $30 for a set.
Perfect.
Unbelievable.
Uh-huh.
And they're good synthetic strings.
Good to know. All right.
Well, I think I've used up all my boring questions, so I'll end with my interesting question.
Oh, I'm so ready.
So I asked all of my guests at the end of the show, if you could go back in time to a moment when you felt like giving up or quitting or like you weren't good enough or maybe a really bad lesson, what would you as grown-up Jen go back and tell younger Jen that would reinvigorate you and inspire you to continue or maybe even to fight back or challenge that person who was giving you a hard time?
Right. Let's see. It would probably have been in college, and I wish I would have done this sooner at a college that will be unnamed. I was actively dissuaded from going into conducting in particular.
Ooh, Nelly.
Yeah, totally. Mostly because I'm a woman. So.
Well, for the viewers out there who have not seen episode 4 with Dr. Anna Edwards, you've got to watch that episode because anybody who wants to be a conductor can.
Yeah, totally. I think Anna and I have a really similar story. I didn't really get into conducting until about 5 or 6 years ago, and now I conduct 2 ensembles here in Boise and do lots of different honor groups and whatever. So, I came at it from being a violist, and now look what happened. So, it's. I would have gone back and don't listen to this jerk. Do the thing that you're really interested in doing. That's what I would have told myself. Because I was young and inexperienced enough to think like, oh, okay, this guy probably knows what he's talking about, and but he didn't, and so. I would have liked to have gone back to that moment, and I don't regret the path that I've done whatsoever because there's nothing. There are a few things I love more than playing my viola, and really my overall passion is about connecting people through music. A phrase I stole from the Windsor Symphony. Thanks, Windsor Symphony. Connecting people through music is the thing that I'm most passionate about, and I've been fortunate to have these conduits of playing the viola and being a conductor to make that happen. But it's really at the end of the day all about relationships and our relationships with one another and taking care of each other, and that's how I've been able to do it.
I don't always have a follow-up, but I have a follow-up this time.
Okay.
How, when we are experiencing criticism that is, we know in our hearts coming from like a totally ungrounded place that of just bias and ignorance.
Yes.
How do we let that criticism just fall right off our shoulder? How do we not take it personally?
Something that I read, and I think it's the book The Four Agreements, is like it's about nothing is about you. It's always about the other person. Nothing that somebody says to you really has anything to do with you, especially if it's a criticism of something about your personhood, And for me, the criticism that I had a stupid, worthless uterus, So, and that women shouldn't go into this profession, and what's wrong with you for even daring to approach and talk about it, and I always had a really strong belief that I could do anything, but I made the mistake of listening to that as opposed to continuing forward with that. I was like, okay, well, I love playing viola. That will also be okay, and I think that really that's the thing that kind of changed the frame for me, is like really realizing that however people react to things, whatever people are saying, especially if it's
that's their choice. It's not necessarily what you have done.
Right, exactly. It's them. And, it's, there's always that, it's not you, it's me. But, it's always like, yeah, well, kind of, it's always the person who's like stating the thing that it's about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I think that wraps up
okay.
the show for the most part. I've got a couple more questions for you off camera, but thank you so much, Jen. This has been an enlightening conversation.
Oh, has it? Okay, well, great.
Well, at least from the age of enlightenment.
Yes. Very.
All right, bye.